how one president stopped the Civil War before it started. Before the Civil War, the United States was teetering on the edge of disunion. Tensions between the North and South had been rising for decades, with slavery at the heart of the dispute. As the country teetered on the brink of war, it took a president, a man often overlooked by history, to step in and make decisions that would ultimately prevent the nation from descending into conflict for a time. This is the story of Millard Fillmore, the 13th President of the United States, a man whose actions, often forgotten by history, played a pivotal role in delaying the Civil War and averting a bloody conflict in the short term. When Fillmore took office in 1850, the country was embroiled in one of its deepest crises. The issue of slavery had reached a boiling point, and the nation was on the brink of collapse. Fillmore's presidency is often overshadowed by the more prominent figures of his time, but his role in the Compromise of 1850 was one of the last great efforts at national unity before the country's eventual split. Fillmore's presidency came during a time when the debate over slavery was threatening to tear the Union apart. The question of whether new states and territories should allow slavery was dividing the nation, and Fillmore was faced with the challenge of keeping the Union intact while navigating the complicated politics of the day. The passage of the Fugitive Slave Act, part of the Compromise of 1850, was one of the most controversial aspects of this deal. While Fillmore supported the act as a means of preserving the Union, it came at a great moral cost, intensifying the abolitionist movement and setting the stage for the deep divisions that would later erupt into war. Despite the controversial nature of his actions, Fillmore's decision to back the compromise was an attempt to buy time for the Union, to delay the inevitable confrontation between the North and South. He believed that without such a compromise, war was unavoidable. However, the tensions he sought to quell were only simmering beneath the surface, and Fillmore's efforts to maintain peace, while admirable, were ultimately unsuccessful in preventing the Civil War that would come just over a decade later. Fillmore's presidency may not be remembered for great achievements or revolutionary ideas, but his role in preventing immediate civil conflict during his time in office was significant. His efforts to navigate the turbulent political waters of the 1850s showed the weight of leadership in times of national crisis. In many ways, Fillmore's presidency was a reminder that even the most seemingly inconsequential figures can have a profound impact on the course of history, especially when their actions provide temporary solutions to seemingly insurmountable problems. So, how did Fillmore's decisions affect the long-term stability of the nation? Was he a man caught between the impossible choices of his time, or did his actions only delay the inevitable conflict that would eventually split the Union? Millard Fillmore's decision to back the Compromise of 1850 came with consequences that would echo through the rest of his presidency. The Fugitive Slave Act, which forced citizens to aid in the capture of runaway slaves and penalized those who helped them escape, was one of the most divisive elements of the compromise. To many in the North, this was a deeply unpopular law, one that contradicted the ideals of freedom and liberty that America claimed to stand for. The act sparked widespread protests and fueled the abolitionist movement, which saw the law as a clear violation of moral principles. For Fillmore, this was a political tightrope. He understood that passing the compromise was essential to keeping the Union together, but he also recognized that he was making concessions that would alienate large portions of the Northern population. The political fallout from his support of the Fugitive Slave Act would haunt him throughout his presidency and ultimately affect his chances for re-election in 1852. The backlash against the law only deepened the growing divide between the North and South, and while it temporarily defused the immediate crisis, it set the stage for the even deeper tensions that would explode in the coming years. As Fillmore navigated the moral complexities of the compromise, the broader implications of his actions became clear. While he had delayed war, he hadn't solved the underlying issue of slavery's expansion. The compromise temporarily cooled tensions, but the deep ideological divide between the North and South only grew. Fillmore's presidency was a stark reminder that compromises based on appeasement rarely provide lasting peace. They only delay the inevitable reckoning. Fillmore's inability to truly resolve the slavery issue was not his only challenge. His presidency coincided with a time of political realignment as the Whig Party, to which he belonged, began to fracture. The political system that had supported him was crumbling under the weight of the divisions over slavery. Fillmore's support of the compromise alienated him from many Northern Whigs, and his failure to fully address the issue of slavery caused him to lose support from the South as well. By the time of the 1852 election, Fillmore was not able to secure his party's nomination, and he quietly left the political stage. Despite the end of his presidency, the story of Millard Fillmore is far from over. His legacy, while clouded by the compromises he made, offers valuable lessons about leadership during a time of deep national division. His actions may have postponed the Civil War, but they also demonstrated the inherent difficulty in maintaining peace when faced with moral and ideological conflict. Fillmore's role in American history may be a footnote to many, but his presidency stands as a testament to the complexity and consequences of leadership in times of crisis. Could Fillmore have done more? Could he have taken a stronger stand against slavery, knowing the moral wrongs it entailed? Or was his presidency a moment in time when even the most well-intentioned actions were bound to fall short in preventing the coming storm of war? In the years that followed Millard Fillmore's presidency, the nation continued to inch closer towards civil war. His time in office is often regarded as one of missed opportunity, a time when decisive action could have averted the deep divisions that would eventually tear the nation apart. However, Fillmore's presidency was also marked by the harsh reality of his political environment. The growing power of the abolitionist movement in the North and the fierce defense of slavery in the South created a national divide that no president could easily bridge. The failure of Fillmore's presidency was not solely the result of his political decisions. It was also the result of an irreconcilable issue at the heart of American society: slavery. Fillmore's efforts to delay the conflict ultimately proved futile, as the nation's ideological rift could not be contained forever. The political compromises he brokered in 1850, such as the Fugitive Slave Act, only postponed the inevitable conflict. The nation had reached a point where the question of slavery's expansion into new territories would no longer be solved by negotiation or compromise. The legacy of Fillmore's presidency, while often overlooked, raises important questions about the nature of political leadership in times of crisis. Fillmore acted out of a genuine desire to preserve the Union, but his inability to confront the moral and political dimensions of slavery made his presidency one of lost chances. His support of the Compromise of 1850, particularly the Fugitive Slave Act, alienated key parts of the electorate, making it difficult for him to unite the country, even as it was rapidly splintering. Even as Fillmore's own political fortunes waned, the very issues he struggled to resolve, slavery, states' rights, and national unity, would continue to dominate the national stage. His inability to move beyond the political compromises of his time left the door open for the eventual rise of more radical figures who would bring the issue of slavery to the forefront in ways that Fillmore had hoped to avoid. Looking back on Fillmore's presidency, it becomes clear that while he was a well-intentioned leader trying to hold the country together, he was constrained by the limits of his time. The moral and political landscape of 1850s America was simply too divided for a compromise-based leadership to succeed in the long term. Fillmore's presidency reminds us of the difficulty in balancing political pragmatism with moral clarity in times of national crisis. By the time the Civil War erupted, Fillmore was no longer a figure in active politics, but his presidency had contributed to the conditions that allowed the war to break out. His tenure offers a cautionary tale of how temporary solutions can often delay, but not prevent, the inevitable confrontations that lie at the heart of a nation's soul. What if Fillmore had been bolder in his actions? What if he had taken a stronger moral stance against slavery and confronted the South directly? Would a different approach have averted war? Or was a civil war always inevitable, given the deep divisions in the country? As the years passed and the Civil War raged on, Millard Fillmore's presidency became a distant memory for many, overshadowed by the grandeur of Abraham Lincoln's leadership and the epic struggle for the nation's soul. But Fillmore's story, though often overlooked, offers us a powerful reflection on leadership during a time of moral and political crisis. His presidency, while marked by the desire to preserve the Union, also serves as a reminder of the limitations of compromise when faced with an inescapable moral reckoning. Fillmore's decision to back the Compromise of 1850 was made in the belief that the Union could be saved through negotiation. His commitment to peace, to maintaining stability in a deeply divided nation, led him to support policies that ultimately deepened the divisions rather than healed them. The Fugitive Slave Act, the centerpiece of the compromise, only fueled the abolitionist movement in the North, while alienating Northern moderates who found the law deeply offensive. And as Southern states began to secede, Fillmore, in hindsight, seemed to be a man caught between the desires of two irreconcilable forces, unable to fully act against the system of slavery or to stop the nation's descent into war. Yet, Fillmore's role in the history of the United States is important, not because of what he achieved, but because of what his presidency reveals about the American political system during times of great division. Fillmore tried to hold together a nation on the brink of collapse, but he was ultimately constrained by the political realities of his time. His presidency reminds us of the difficulty of addressing systemic problems in a nation where differing moral values and political ideologies collide. Millard Fillmore's actions, though often viewed as failures, are not a reflection of personal weakness, but rather a testament to the deep political and moral divisions that define 19th century America. His presidency offers a cautionary tale about the dangers of avoiding difficult moral decisions for the sake of political expediency. The road he chose may have temporarily staved off war, but it did not change the fundamental issues at play. The Civil War, as history shows, was a conflict that could not be avoided indefinitely. As we reflect on Fillmore's legacy, we are left with the question: could more decisive action have avoided the bloodshed of the Civil War, or was the conflict inevitable, shaped by centuries of division? Fillmore's story urges us to ask ourselves how we navigate moments of crisis, whether we seek temporary compromises or find the courage to address the deeper, more challenging truths that must be confronted. In the end, Millard Fillmore's presidency reminds us that leadership is not just about making decisions that maintain the status quo, but about recognizing the moments in history when we must take bold action to confront the deep divides within our society. His tenure, while brief and largely forgotten, played an integral role in the story of how America faced its most difficult moral and political challenge.